Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Squall Growth Podcast. I am here with a very special guest today. I'm so excited to introduce Brian Gannon, CEO and founder of Loop Frame. Brian, great to have you on the show.
Chris, great to be here. Appreciate you having me.
Awesome. So, Brian, it'd be great to just start off and tell our listeners about your background and in terms of how did you start your company, Loop?
Yeah. So, a little bit quick about me, and it does connect to the formation of the company. But I live in San Francisco now, and I've been here about 20 years, right in the middle of the city. But I grew up in Boston, and most of my family's still on the East Coast. So, a little bit more about my background. But I went to MIT in Boston. And then out of that, I went to the Boston Consulting Group. I was an electrical engineer for a little while, so I was actually. People don't believe it, but I was actually a computer chip designer for like 5 years. And then I got my MBA and then worked at the Boston Consulting Group in the Sydney office. And that Sydney office took me from Boston, provincial, born and raised, to international location. It was fabulous. And then I moved back to the States and got to Silicon Valley. So once you get a taste of that weather, it's really difficult to go all the way back to Boston. So I moved here, got back into tech because, consulting is not really tech. We had some clients, but it was like, I was working in the wine business, mining, banking, everything. It was really incredible. Airlines, which means Qantas. But it was fascinating and a real well-rounded experience. But then I got back into tech and I joined a company called Maxim Integrated, where I built a product line in the video processing business, right? Video processing, what is that? And it's really the video compression. If you think about, we're recording a lot of video through different products, even in right here, there's a core tech that goes in that, right? To take that video, compress it so you can put it in the web and you could store it. It's the same technology that goes into GoPro. It's the same technology that goes into Ring doorbell and Dropcam. And so I got to meet, through building this business, the founder of Ring doorbell, Jamie, right? When he was building Ring, knocked on our door and said, I heard you've got this tech for essentially video compression and doorbell camera application. I said, yeah, we got to meet, and he's been super helpful with his limit. While he's scaling his business, he would be very helpful. So incredible. And now, by the way, the new CEO of Ring Doorbell, coincidentally, is actually a Loop investor and a customer, right? Which is incredible how full circle this is. But while I was there, I kind of started to while I was building this product line, I started to meet these founders of these amazing businesses and realize that actually what I was doing was trying to determine what they would need 2 years ahead of what they needed. Because I had to have the tech ready for them to build a brand. And so you develop this intuition on what's next and what's out there. And at one point I said, look, these guys are getting all the shine here, and not that we're doing all the work, but we're definitely, in that mix. And if I see another business issue, a problem that I think I could solve and make myself, I think I'm going to take it. And so when I had kids, I'm now out here in San Francisco, but my family's all on the East Coast. And so we're spread out, as a lot of families are, right? It's a very common situation. But, I really wanted to keep them connected. And, I actually just didn't want to post pictures of my kids on Facebook. It was as simple as that. And in some ways, I think we're a little bit ahead of our time in terms of people, their behavior change and thinking about privacy and whose ownership and all that. For me, it was a little bit more, in the sense, convenience or inconvenience. It was like, hey, look, I don't want a billion pictures to see, every picture of my kid. I'm kind of care about these 5 to 10 people that are my sort of immediate family, and especially grandparents and that sort of thing. And so we built an app, and, we thought we were going to, be the Facebook killer for private networks and all that stuff. And people said they would love it, and people said that they would buy or use it. It was actually really hard for them to get to use it. It's just like building anything consumer. You think it's going to be easy, it's so much harder. And so we weren't really doing well. We had an app, people said they liked it, but when they got it, the engagement was low. Then what happened was my dad got really sick on the East Coast. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is really scary. It was getting bleak. He's in the hospital. And I realized that, I'm a bad son here. I've got these beautiful little grandchildren growing up in San Francisco, but, I'm not sharing pictures. I'm not really doing this effort to keep them up to date and involved. And I said, what if he could see all of these things? What if he could see those grandkids in their eyes? He'd want to be there, right? He'd want to be alive for all these life events. And so I said, okay. So I bought him an iPad, loaded it up with fake accounts on Instagram and all this other stuff and this photo sharing. And I sent it over there and I'm like, great. I'm going to be the son of everything, right? He's going to be like so happy about this. And I call up and they're like, no, he hasn't touched it. And I'm like, Dad, no, there's everything there. And he said, okay, well, let's try it. I go, okay, hit the button. Which button? There's no button. Oh, no, it's a magic button because it's Apple. All right, great. Now swipe this little magic thing here to turn it on. No, you got to be perfect. Try swiping again. Hit the button. Okay, now put in the secret code. Here's the code. Now I need you to go to the app. An app. And I'm like, whoa. This is crazy. Like, why are we going through all these steps? I really just want him to see the damn pictures. This is like a compute device. And in fact, it looks like a news reader. And I said, here's, I'm an engineer. I get an engineering background. I can build him something super basic. So I Raspberry Pi connected it to a display and shipped him over this jury-rigged, just hairy wire nest, but it had a display and it was unconnected to Wi-Fi. Sent it over there. And I connected it into that app that I had made. So I had that photo sharing app software that was being unused, but now I could connect it to this frame and I just started pushing pictures with the app. And in the end, people started calling me up and they go, you're not going to believe this. Like, he is just bright. He is so happy about this. Every day there's new pictures there. And by the way, could we get one of these things? It's really cool. And so I said, sure, whatever. And we made up a couple more for the family. And then people asked me, oh, by the way, where do I get the app for this? And I said, holy crap. Like, nobody's ever asked me for the app. We've been trying to push this on somebody. And then everything sort of dawned on me where I said, oh my gosh, like, I have actually seen this movie before. It reminds me a lot of, in a sense, either Dropcam or Ring Doorbell, where they had a piece of hardware, right, that was sort of the lead of the company. You're buying a piece of hardware and you can make a profit on it, unlike a typical social app. And then people would download the app and we could have a subscription back end, right? It had been proven out through Ring, it's been proven out through Dropcam, that if you have essentially storage in the cloud, which we're going to have content, that people will pay for storage of something in the cloud, at the very least. And so that was the light bulb moment. And, that was the beginning of this company. And it just turns out that one of my best friends was an investor of Ring Doorbell too. I don't want to overdo this Ring Doorbell, but there are a lot of similarities because essentially we tried to mimic a lot of the things that they did right. We're a different company, but there's a lot that we could learn from them in building a huge brand. I always tell people, I think we could be 3 times as big as Ring. I think it's a great brand, but you only have one front door and you've got an office, you've got a home, you've got grandparents. There's a lot more play. We can go to any apartment. So we just think it's a bigger opportunity with net. So long answer, but that's how we got here.
So let me recap that a bit for our listeners here. Is that it seems like you had an aging parent, your dad was sick, and you wanted to keep that connection to your family and your kids who were across the country.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And so when we kind of thought about the product, what we were doing is that it was more what it was. It was a bit of a communication device. Like, if we're going to say, what is it? It's a communication system, right? Maybe simply call it a social network, but that's not really what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to communicate and keep connected these family members. And then one other thing, and I would say that was the formation of the company. And I'm going to have an interesting point to tie it all together in a minute, which is fascinating and new. But to be honest with you, I don't even know if that was enough for me to start the company. Like, I was like, wow, that's great. I could see that use case. But I'm like, is this big enough? Is this broad enough for everybody to use? And we built some prototypes and then had it in our own house. And what I found was it solved another problem. And the second problem is that the parent, let's say your core customer is a new parent with young kids and family spread away. Like, that's your sort of like canonical demographic situation. That parent has 1 billion photos on their phone. and they're never going to look at them again. We're capture machines. There's going to be this mysterious day down the line when we're 80 that we're going to finally go through these hundreds of thousands. Will never happen. And so when we started to look at this and we prototyped it, of course, it was just the content that was on my phone and started streaming. And we found we were mesmerized for hours, sitting there, forget about, we weren't on our phones anymore, texting somebody else. We put the phones down, healthy talk about, wow, remember that? Wow, remember this? And then the kids come in and they go, whoa, remember that? And I said, wow, this is solving another whole issue that we didn't even know existed about this idea of our buried memories. And then secondly, that this could be a healthy way for us to stay connected inside houses with both husband and wife, enjoying it, kids that are there, and even when people come over and having these communal, healthy experiences.
Well, that's so cool that you find that point, right? And just so that you saw that we now have this amazing technology to capture infinite amount of photos instantaneously. It's all in our pockets and the quality continues to go up. But then actually viewing these photos, that is the problem, is that there seems to be nowhere for us to display and share these photos with our family. We don't have that family album anymore. And it just seems so cumbersome to print out all these photos.
Yeah. And we're all kind of a bit lazy and busy, let's just say. And so what happens is, this is why we named the company Loop. We just found out that we were leaving people out of the loop in some ways. And the second connotation was, of course, bringing memories back to yourself. So there's really two meanings to the name. It was great. Trademarked, right? And so it really was a fascinating sort of experience around keeping those family members connected.
So Brian, it's so interesting that you keyed on this idea that we're all carrying around these machines that can capture infinite amount of photos instantaneously, but there's no way for us to really display and share these photos that we captured with others. And there's no family album anymore.
No, it's exactly right. And actually, when some people say, hey, what's your biggest competition? You know what I'll say? I'll say, it's text messaging, right? Basically, text messaging has become the closest thing to a family social network. Most people won't post 1 billion pictures on social media, even if they're pretty heavy users. You go to their text message chain, there's 5 to 10 people of family, and that's the daily chatting. And I remember going to somebody who felt so satisfied. No, Brian, we've got a text message chain. It's going great. I go, really? Anything wrong with it, or is it perfect? Well, geez, it gets pretty noisy, so it's the only text message chain I have that's muted. And then we always wonder, where'd all those great pictures go? We saw them in the moment, but now they're buried in some text chain lost. And now that I think about it, we actually do this other thing for our grandparents because they're not on the text message chain, right? So we do a printout thing, and then I make an album, and I have a Dropbox folder, and you hear these elaborate hacks. Oh, and then by the way, my dad has an Android phone, so he's kind of not on it. It turns, makes everything really weak and low res. I'm like, so it's really not that great. And they're like, how do you think about it? Yeah. And so when we don't promise this. This is not the sort of customer promise. This is just an observation of there's a little bit more talking to the big idea behind it. But when we ship a loop into a family and it sets in, we're just promising this is going to be a really easy way to share pictures with your family, right? That's about it, right? Don't want to overpromise it. But when we do our jobs right, you'll see that the photos that used to get shared in the text message chain start to morph over to loop, because the value is so much higher. You're like, everyone's going to get this. It's going to pop up right in the middle of my mom's day, and she's going to be so bright and happy about it. She can still get it on her phone and show somebody if she's at church or out and about. She can get right to it because it's right there. There's a feed. People then can add comments to the messages. They can add it becomes this, again, we don't say this to customers, but it becomes their private family network and a place to curate all the best photos and to go back to them at any time.
Yeah, it's interesting for me is that it seems like even with text messaging and the apps on the phone, it seems like the two groups that are left out are the older members of our family and the younger members of our family, kids and grandparents, because they're not on the text message.
No, it's fascinating. I always get a kick when I'll talk with a customer who I might just know a little bit better, and say, hey, by the way, I noticed you've given one to this family member, one mom, dad, grandparent, awesome. And they're so happy. I said, you ever think of getting one for yourself? No. We've got the app, so we're cool. We're happy. I go, why don't you just, here's a discount. Why don't you just go get another on me? It can change everything. And they go, a week later, 2 weeks later, they'll call me back and they go, oh my God, I get it. I completely get what you're talking about. Like this. And again, one of that pieces of the puzzle is now the kids are involved in everything. And now the kids, remember, kids like to look at pictures and videos of themselves, right? That's really what they care about. So they'll say, hey, mommy, send that to Luke. I want to see that when we get back, right? Rather than stealing your phone and going through it. So yeah, I really think there's, the big bucket is those barbells on the side. And then in the middle is just you and me and, having a glass of wine with the wife or something like that, or your partner, and looking and enjoying and reminiscing on.
So, we talked a little bit about this, but, you have Instagram, you have Facebook, you have all these, the Apple Photo Share, you have all these different ways to share photos. Why is there a need for Loop to solve this problem?
Yeah. So what's fascinating is there is a huge distinction between photo storage, right, and backup, right? And what we found is that mainly that is what its purpose is, right? Hey, look, you're okay. It's all backed up, right? And then some people will say, I'm going to curate an album and then I'm going to share it with a family member. You'll find that that's actually a small number of people as compared to how many people text photos. And it's because that's a heavy duty lift. Very few people have the patience to go create albums these days, share that album. And again, now who do you share? Only people that are access to probably a mobile device, and you're still missing out on people, right? Maybe they have an iPad, but then they have to go digging for it. So you really have all these friction steps. And so they're doing a great job of backing up 100% of every photo you've ever made, including the parking meter. Here's another one too. We hear when people have like streaming photo albums, they're like, oh yeah, unfortunately, we had this stream set up, but I was taking a picture of my parking space, then I had a whiteboard and all this other junk is in it. It just wasn't the good stuff. So we really wanted to build a system where it was so easy to share a photo in the app that you would, and this is, remember, you're curating, right? In some ways, right? You're thinking about it in the moment, go, oh, everyone would love that. And if I can get you to do that just once a day, right around that level, it's not a heavy lift. One photo, boom, we're done. That was today, right? Next day, one photo, boom. Right around that cadence, let's say. Soon after a year, you've got 300 plus, really curated of the best stuff. And it just grows and grows over time. And you don't really have to go into that crazy massive photos.
Cool. And then, there's other, digital frames and stuff, but I've always had trouble because it's like kind of a pain to transfer photos. Like how's Loop easier?
Yeah, it's a great. And in fact, when we were starting the company, if you remember, like we started as a software company, right? And then we looked and we go, oh my God, this is basically a digital frame. I'm like, I remember those things. Those are terrible, right? You had to go in and load them with an USB card, and then the screen was horrible. And I was like, oh, that's right. And we started looking, we go, look, they're probably going to start to be connected, right? That's not a thing, that's not an unusual trajectory. You could see them coming up of, hey, I'm connected to Wi-Fi and that sort of thing. But we realized, we said, where we could have an advantage here in Silicon Valley is that this is no longer going to be about speeds and feeds. Like, hey, this resolution, and I've got this many megs of storage. No, that's a hardware company's job. And you'll never win against China because they'll always find a way to make that hardware cheaper, right? The new world is all about software features. Like the most useful probably feature we have in the entire product is a liking system where you can press a button like on the phone and it likes a photo, and that notification goes out to anyone who saw the photo or even been shared with. And that creates this engagement loop. And so we said, look, if you look at the way Facebook's evolved, Instagram's evolved, Snapchat, there's really a never-ending set of features and use, and roadmap that you could build out. So you can look a few steps ahead, but you realize it's probably going to go forever, right? And so we said that is the track we want to be on.
So then, just to replay this in a simple way for our listeners to grasp everything here, is what are the ways that Loop really differentiates itself in this photo sharing market?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is, first of all, one, which is fascinating. We have 3 times as many app users as we have frame users, right? So when we ship out one frame, that will result in, let's say, a classic use case. Hey, look, let's send one to mom. It's her birthday. Easy peasy, bread and butter business for us. Okay, great. Well, let me download the app. Oh, and then my brother and sister will download it, and maybe even mom herself, right? And that begins the process. And then what happens is you'll see another loop go to another. Hey, wait, my in-laws want one too. And we're already set up and running. Let's get one. And then that side of the family fans out on the app side. So we're kind of led by the hardware and then a fan out in the app and then the hardware. And that's part of the virality of the product, which is fantastic for the business. And so that's one piece of the puzzle about how, and so why is that special and different? Well, why do people do that? They do it because the app is so easy to use, right? It's fun and friendly. And it's so easy to invite people. You can actually text message an invite. It'll take you to the app store, you download it, you're fully connected. You can email an invite. Of course, we want you to connect as fast and as easily as possible, right? Do it in the app. In 2 minutes, you're fully connected. So now you're networked out and everyone's connected. Now, with it, our feed looks a lot like on the app, like Instagram in a way, because we wanted to be familiar. So it's a picture with some messaging underneath it, and you could add likes, emojis, and all that other stuff. And that's the engagement and metadata that goes along with each photo. And when you want to see what was posted, you're just scrolling up and down. It feels super familiar, super easy. And then when you want to share a picture, it's literally 2 steps. It's like press button, share picture, you select it. You have the option of adding a cool little message that goes with it, in a sense that Snapchatty feel of like a layered message on a piece of content to add more richness. And then we have other integrations that we're putting together. The integration of, like we talked about, text message integration. We have, on a beta test, we have Google Photos integration. If your workflow is already in Google Photos, we can adapt to that. We can have that album stream into there. Not your entire family might not be on that, but if your workflow is on that, and we even have the talks with an integration that we're building with Adobe Lightroom. So we're going to be at the forefront of any new advancement to make things just easier for our customers to stay connected with their family through photos and videos.